one storm causes damage, well, we just had two with Florence and the latest nonsense in Florida, Michael. And out comes the climate change clowns again. All too predictable, beggars belief actually. But where were they when Florida, which is a key hurricane zone, and had 0 hurricanes between 2004 and 2016? No, they just ignore that fact, while their facts get in the way of an agenda. Now, we all know storms cause damage, we all get that. But the issues raised in the last show of building where we shouldn't build, and the poor construction methods, particularly in the south, should not be overlooked as a major factor of the destruction. When you add in the facts that there is a massive shortfall implemented over many years of the lack of funding into America's infrastructure, where rivers, lakes, dams are not properly managed, safeguards not put in place like seawalls to protect buildings in low-lying areas, or levees deliberately blown during Katrina. Let's not forget that as well. But there's a hidden but an increasing narrative now coming into light. I pointed it out last year, that some regions are being deliberately trashed so the greedy parasites buy up all the land, property and resources for pennies on the dollar. Hello, Haiti, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic and New Orleans, to name but a few, California. This has to be taken seriously, as this is what they do. They're now doing it to a whole nation to financially ruin it and then buy up everything on the cheap, or so they think. That country is America, not some third world country everyone ignores. Now, I have been in an actual Cat 3, Cat 4 storm back in 2004, and although damage was extensive, it was nowhere near what we have been shown on the Portal People TV. That was not a Cat 4 storm, nowhere near it. It just wasn't. Now, the lying everything is catastrophic group known as the Weather Channel told you that with their own wind speeds displayed on the screen whilst it was ongoing. It gave a whole host of all the regions where the storm was and where the storm going, and the winds ranged from 16 to 53 miles an hour. It was all on the screen. And whilst the storm was over land, and apparently over Tallahassee, according to the screenshot, the live pictures from Tallahassee, which is hardly far from the coast, so no diminishing of wind speeds there, was showing 41 miles per hour winds. And yet we see mass destruction, houses flattened, roads torn up, bridges torn up, whole areas gone, with 41 mile an hour winds. Basic common sense tells you something is radically amiss here, and perhaps a cover-up or a distraction of how and why the Florence storm danced up and down the coast and encompassed so many states. All smacks of the selective California fire damage to me. But one question is always overlooked in a narrative, and this is where the overview comes in. Ignore all the chaos and see the bigger picture. Now, you've all seen the damage on the TV, but there was 26 Weather Channel people, and they were all in the key locations of the storm. And yet, despite widespread destruction, which they have relayed all over the world, not one of them were injured, and not one of the buildings they were located in, close to the coast, remember, was flattened. How and why is that? Now, nobody wants anyone to be injured, but all these storms, hurricanes, and they all miraculously survive untouched, and their buildings that they're in remain intact while everywhere else is flattened. How's that possible? Just isn't, is it? Yet again, the vultures have swooped into those regions, and yet again, FEMA is found wanting. No advanced plans, no planning, everything reactive and not proactive. That will be corrected in the future. Now, one of the things that came out of the Florida issue, and it's something that needs to be addressed, is all coastal building codes have to be rewritten. It's an utter joke. They are an utter joke. No house in Florida would pass any building code in Europe. None. And anyone with no construction background in Florida can pass a building inspection course, including the advanced one, within 2 weeks. Drake will be pleased with that one. That has to change. Also, building on sandbanks in a hurricane zone. Now, for those of you that don't know, all of Florida has a narrow strip of land away from the mainland on both coasts. And this is where all the expensive properties are built. It's basically in the ocean. Now, most of Florida itself, the mainland, is sand-based. But out in the ocean, really. And places like Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Daytona, and even up into Georgia and the Carolinas, this building practice is beyond stupid. Or even worse, like New Orleans, which is below sea level. It's ridiculous. We have to think better than that. I know a lot of people, I did myself at one point until I seen what happened with Charlie, would all like to live on the beach. But it's dangerous. Way too dangerous. And we had a discussion in the chat, which I'm going to add into here. And the other thing that's the problem around coastal regions is mobile homes. Now, in my opinion, these need to be phased out as permanent living. They're called mobile for a reason. A bit of wind gets up or water and they go mobile. And it costs way too many lives for people living in those things each year. I do get why people live in them, because they are cheaper. But we have to think better than that and put people in solid homes away from coastal erosion, away from storms, and away from sandbanks. Way too many people's lives are being lost because of that. But the idea that there's overpopulation and there's nowhere to build is, again, utter ridiculous. There is plenty of space to build without building on dangerous coastlines. The whole world population, each individual person, can have 1,000 square foot property and all fit in the state of Texas. The whole world population. What about all the other states and continents? Now, the issue of living near the coast is around 200 years out of date. People in the past didn't have sanitation and water pumped into their homes like they do now through the piping system, so they had to live near water. They had no option. Now we do. And we could replace the bacteria poop pipelines, known as oil, with water pipelines and move people away from the coasts. The beach is for everyone, not just exclusive rich hotel chains. Look at all the continents. 80% of the people are living near the oceans. Now, like I said, in the past that was useful for water use, but this is 2018 for source's sake. We have the ability to move water wherever it is needed. If we can afford to spend vast sums of our money on outdated tech called oil pipelines, we can better spend that money on a pipeline that is the key ingredient for life here. Water. And despite what the reptilian-like clown of Nestle said, clean water is a human right. Once again, I can assure you, big plans are in place to correct much of what has been said in this piece. But we also have to change our way of thinking. Yes, it's fun to live on the ocean, but is it so much fun that it's worth the cost of lives and resources to correct that? In my opinion, it's a far too high a price that we've repeatedly paid throughout history, and it's time to rethink. You can go right round the world, the amount of people lost, whether it's through hurricanes, typhoons as they're called, on the other side of the planet, or deluges in monsoon areas, or earthquakes that create tsunamis. What was it, 260,000 people? And the one on Boxing Day about 12 years ago. It's not worth it. It's just not worth it.